Tyler. Mm, I moaned, cuddling into my soft pillow. I was so warm and comfy right now. I don't want to get up one little bit. Not for anyone or anything. I was smiling sheepishly, eyes still closed, enjoying my first moments for the day. A hand reached over me and started running up and down my spine, and it felt so good, soft and gentle and tender. Morning, sleepy, purred the voice of an angel from the skies. I wiggled into his chest more, lifting my head to rest my face in his neck. I kissed his jaw a few times and entwined my fingers with his hand, the one that wasn't stroking me. Shh, it's not morning yet. Go back to sleep. I breathed happily, and Max chuckled beneath me. He didn't say anything. He just let me stay like this for a little while longer. Tyler, Max spoke so softly, it was like honey on marshmallow clouds. Yup, I'm letting my inner gay be out and free. Hmm? I replied, breathing him in. And the week I've been here, it's been heaven. I never want to leave. Today, you're going home, he mumbled, and I wasn't sure I heard right. I pulled back and frowned at him. Home? I am home. You're my home. We're going home, you mean, right? A weird feeling was forming inside me, and I didn't like it one bit. Why didn't he say we? Max sighed and sat up, forcing me backwards. He couldn't meet my eyes. Your family's probably worried sick. Friends, too. I couldn't get a signal out fast enough for the board to not pick it up and trace it back. They don't know where you are. Besides, there are things I need to do here first, alone, in order for us to be together, Max explained. I sighed and bowed my head. There was no point arguing. I knew that many things were going on that I didn't understand about. Max and his father have been talking in private a lot lately, and I had a feeling this kind of thing was coming. They were going to take down the Juperian leaders and regain control of their planet. You'll come back for me, won't you? I asked his stomach. Max cupped my chin and lifted my face to his. I promise you that when all of this is over and done with, I will find you, and we can be together forever, he said, and I felt much better. Good. I pouted and kissed him. Because if you don't, I'll hunt you down. He laughed and rolled over, pinning me to the bed. What makes you think you could find me? He asked, and I grinned evilly. Because I'll hold myself hostage until you come out of hiding. I bargained, and he nodded. Fair enough. He winked and pressed his lips to mine. The rest of the day was spent packing and preparing a ship to take me home. Rivif and Max arranged all kinds of things for the journey, and then it came time to say goodbye. Have a safe ship, dear, Miss Kyasora said to me sweetly. It's trip, dear, Mr. Kyasora corrected his wife, who laughed. Oops, sorry, dear. She chuckled and hugged me. I hugged her back. I will. You take care, too, I said as she patted the side of my head. Good luck, Rivif told me, shaking my hand. I shook it back and nodded, then turned to Max. This was the goodbye I was dreading the most. But when I turned, I saw Max walking up the ramp of the ship and stopping in the hatch doorway. What? Did you think I was going to let you go on your own? He asked me, laughing. Bye, Mom and Dad. See you soon, he added, and disappeared inside. I waved to his parents one last time and ran in too. Max was at the controls, and he pushed a button to close the door. Buckle up, he said, and started the engine. I grinned and sat in the co-pilot seat, putting the belt on. I glanced sideways at him, and he grinned at me before taking off. Marco. I drew circles on Neil's bare back as he slept on his stomach on my bed. He'd finally worn himself out so much he collapsed an hour ago, just after arriving here. My dad had been home, so I'd been forced to explain the situation to him and how Neil was my boyfriend, and surprisingly, he was quite accepting of it. Neil groaned in his sleep, eyebrows drawing together. I poked his forehead lightly to flatten them out, and he eased. I wondered what he was dreaming about, but I had a pretty good guess. He was dreaming of Tyler's body being found. The search by the police had been called off yesterday. They'd told Tyler's family that there was nothing more they could do. That's when Neil had broken. "Tyler," Neil breathed, calling out for his nephew. My chest ached. I wanted to help so badly, but what could I do? Vienna and I had tried to track down the records of Max from the school, trying to find out where he lived, but the receptionist said there weren't any. Gunnar had gone around asking everyone he bumped into if they'd seen either boys, but no one had. After that, Gunnar and Sarah had gone north up the coast, looking through other towns and cities, while Vienna and her mom went south. Neil and I had tried going inland, but there wasn't any places to look once you hit the outback. Tyler said Max was an alien. I didn't want to think about what could have happened if that was true. I frowned. There was a rumbling noise in the distance. What was that? I'd never heard any kind of noise before. It wasn't like a motorcycle engine or a car, and certainly not a plane or a helicopter. It was coming from outside the house, so I went to my bedroom window and looked up into the night sky. My jaw dropped, and I ran to Neil, shaking him awake. He stirred and blinked at me. "What?" he asked, still groggy. "You have to see this," I told him, and dragged him to the window. Peering outside, Neil gawked when he saw it too. Coming down from the sky was a huge pear-shaped thing. It glided gracefully, humming away, before landing in my backyard. "No way," I breathed in shock. It can't be." The humming stopped once the engine was at the halt, and then it steamed from the bottom. A hatch opened up, and a ramp dropped to the ground. That's when Tyler stepped out. Neil was running for the door before I could even register what I was seeing. I chased after him, and we burst through to the backyard. Tyler saw us and smiled casually. I stopped in my tracks, but Neil kept going. He grabbed Tyler by the arms and looked him over. "Are you hurt? Are you hurt?" he cried, and Tyler laughed. "No, I'm fine." He smiled, Max appearing in the doorway. "Good," Neil said, and punched Tyler in the face. "Don't you ever fucking do that to me again. Do you hear?" I smiled as Tyler grabbed his face, a cracked and bleeding lip, and smirked at his uncle. "I missed you too," he said, and they hugged. "And you," Neil turned to Max, who looked surprised to be addressed at all. "I'm going to—" "No, wait, it's not his fault. I'll explain everything," Tyler cried, holding his uncle back. I walked over and patted my best friend's back once Neil had calmed down a little. "Welcome home," I told him. "Good to be home," he replied. "Your parents are going to kill you," I said, and he nodded. "I had a feeling they might." Tyler. So I got home, explained everything to my parents and my uncle, got grounded for the rest of my life, even though it wasn't my fault. And my parents were forcing me to move back in with them, saying Neil was too young to handle a teenager. Neil didn't seem to mind, though he promised my mom that he'd be over 3 times as often now. Max moved the ship out of Marco's backyard and hid it. Then Marco and Neil said goodbye and left. I was standing in my backyard, waiting for Max to come back now, so that he could say goodbye too. "Hey," a voice said behind me, and I whirled around. Max walked out of the shadows of a tree and came over to me. I hugged him tightly, reluctant to let him go. "It's not forever," he told me, but it didn't feel that way. "Hurry back," I demanded, and he smirked. "I will." He mused and pulled away to look at my face. He sighed and kissed my forehead lightly. "Don't forget me," he breathed, and I raised an eyebrow at him. "Seriously? You seriously think, after everything we've been through, that I could possibly forget you? Don't you forget me!" I snapped, and he laughed again. "Okay, I won't." He chuckled, and I punched him in the arm. "I'm kidding. I couldn't forget you either." "Better," I told him and reached up to kiss him. He kissed me back, long with tongue. It was a kiss like the one that re-energized us. I could feel the intensity of it rising, forcing my adrenaline levels up. Max lipped the corner of my mouth, making me moan a little before pulling away. We were both panting, and his eyes were glowing brightly. "I love you," he said instead of saying goodbye. I liked this better. Goodbyes seemed permanent somehow. "I love you too," I replied with a smile. He gave me one last kiss and a longing look before turning and walking back into the shadows. I stood there in the yard for a long time after he'd disappeared, waiting for my body to start moving again. But I felt numb right now, so I'll be waiting a while. And that's the end. Um, I don't know. I'm not exactly a young X old kind of person. I don't enjoy the whole idea of like high schoolers dating adults. I wanted to read a story about aliens. So that's what this was. It just has other things in it. But overall, pretty good. Decent at some points. Writing could have been better. I know the author put a lot of work into it. I overall enjoyed the story. Um, Anything else? I already did find another one that I really wanted to read after this one, so I felt like I had to bang this out real quick because, like, since I've decided to do this, I struggle to keep multiple stories in my head at the same time. So I can't read this one and then also do, like, my nighttime reading, you know? So I figured once I get this over with, I can then jump to the next book that I really wanted to read because while I've been reading this one, I look for other books or stories, novels, whatever you want to call them. And I found one that I really like, which is typically about werewolves. You know, so that's what's going to be read next. I'll get into that. I'm planning to make a small like intro video for it, along with like I guess the brief synopsis. That way, if it interests them, they can. Well, I say interest them, interest you. You know, you can go ahead and continue on that playlist. But I don't know. What did you guys think? It was okay. There was nothing too dirty in it, so I didn't have to feel super awkward reading it out loud. Although I did cringe and like there were a lot of cuts to this, trying to like not laugh at some parts, which it did have some okay comedy in it, which always is nice to lighten the mood. It always sucks when a story is too deep and too like stabby. You need something to lighten everything. You need a little sweet to go with that bitter. Although I do like angsty stories. Um, I am trying to find one that has a bad ending. I want one where like the couple doesn't do well. That's what I'm currently looking for as well. But yeah, this is the end. I hope you guys enjoyed How to Befriend an Alien, written by Mookie21. I'm sure they put a lot of effort and time into this. Overall, absolutely appreciated the story, and I've already recommended it to several of my friends who like to read the same trash as me. So yeah, leave a comment. Tell me what you thought of the story and of my reading. And what was the thing that you liked the most about it? Or like, didn't like the most about it? Personally, it was the fact that like what's butt's dad was totally okay with him dating the principal. And then the fact that like Vienna was just totally okay with the dude she was dating suddenly being like, "Oh, BT dubs, girl. I'm gay and I'm dating this guy at the same time now." Like, yeah, I get that it said she was a fag hag, but like, come on. Any reasonable person tends to have like a little emotional backlash at stuff like that. I get that the author didn't want to probably like write all that. They wanted to write the story about the two main characters being together. So, that's all. Anyway, have a good one. Thanks for listening. If you made it this far, I fucking love you. And yeah, goodbye. Tyler. Bang! I punched my locker door, frustrated that it wouldn't open. People were staring at me as they passed, but I didn't care. I was in a bad mood, and the weather outside the window behind me fitted it perfectly. The sky was so dark it was almost nighttime, and it was pouring down with rain so hard you couldn't see more than a few feet. Distant rumbles of thunder threatened to come closer and dampen the feeling further. "Chill," Marco said, standing beside me. "How could the teacher give me a C minus? He told us to write about plants and the universe, and I did. Grumpy old man." I growled, fiddling again with my locker. It sprung open, and I shoved my stuff inside. "A C minus isn't the end of the world," Gunnar laughed, walking past us on his way to his locker, and I poked my tongue out at him. What did he know? He gets straight A's. Right then, the principal came around the corner. His clean-pressed suit was fitted perfectly, and his hair was clean and sleek. He came over to us and stopped. "Tyler, please refrain from vandalism to the school property. he told me, and I scowled, but stopped punching my locker. Then he turned to Marco. Could I see you in my office for a minute? Sure, Marco said, and the principal walked off, heading to his office. Marco turned to me and grinned mischievously. Try not to get too upset, he told me. Easy for you to say. Go on, go after your boyfriend. I said the last part under my breath, to make sure no one heard us. Marco grinned wider and wiggled his eyebrows. Give you a lift after school? He asked as he started walking backwards towards the office. Thanks, I called after him, and he turned on his heel, running down the hall. I sighed and leaned my forehead on the cool metal locker door. Man, 2 years really does go by quickly. I hardly noticed how much time had passed since Max had said goodbye, and now I was graduating high school tomorrow morning. Hey! Vienna cried, appearing beside me. She wrapped her arms around my waist and hugged me tightly. So, our graduation is this weekend, and, of course, I'm throwing a huge party. Are you bringing a date? She asked me, excitedly. Her boyfriend appeared behind her, giving me a light wave. Charlie and Vienna had broken up about 7 months ago now. I can't really remember the details, but it didn't matter now because a few months after that, she found this one. Rick. I like Rick more than I like Charlie. I waved back and then looked at Vienna, raising my eyebrows and giving her a mental silent message. She put her hands on her hips. Tyler, when are you going to move on? You don't have to forget about him, but that doesn't mean you have to be single forever, V told me. What was wrong with being single, V? I can make myself happy. I don't need someone to do it for me. It's not like I'm sitting around the house all day moping like some princess who thinks her world revolves around her boyfriend, I told her. It was true. After Max left, I refused to be some broken teenage sob story. I got on with my life, kept my grades up, went out with friends, and had fun, but getting myself another boyfriend? It just didn't feel right. I mean, it's only been 2 years. I wasn't going to give up on Max that easily. Geez, who do you take me for? I know, but sometimes it's good to have someone, she sighed, then took my hand and held it. Look, I'll give you time to think about it, and if you decide to bring someone, let me know, okay? I nodded, but only for her benefit, because in my mind I was saying, no way, sister. The bell went as Vienna and Rick wandered off down the hall. I was glad school was over. I wanted to go home and go over my essay to see why Mr. Fuchs would possibly give me a C- in science right before graduation. I groaned and kicked the locker beneath mine. I'd forgotten to clean it out before closing it. Yeesh. So I spent another 20 minutes trying to unlock the stupid thing. By then, everyone had gone home, except a few cleaners. I finally got myself and wandered up to the principal's office to see if Neil and Marco were done doing whatever it is they were doing. When I got there, the door was open, and there was no sign of them. Huh, that's odd. A cleaner was working behind me, and I turned to him. Excuse me, do you know where the principal went? I asked. He looked up at me. Sorry, kid. He left about 10 minutes ago. The cleaner replied gloomily. What about the student he was with? I frowned. Oh, you mean a young man, black hair, Italian descent? Yeah, that's him, I cried eagerly. He left before that. I think he said something about getting home before the rain came, the cleaner said, and then scurried off. I groaned and kicked a chair. Those boneheads. I grunted and wandered back through the school, as if they would leave me behind. Marco was even the one who offered me a lift, and it was too late now to catch a bus. I was gonna have to walk. I got to the back door that led onto the oval and opened them, stepping outside. The sky had opened up, and rain was pouring from the heavens with no sign of stopping. You've got to be kidding me, I pouted. Don't make me use my mind powers to punish you. But the rain seemed to laugh at my threat, because it began to rain harder. I decided to sit down on the steps and wait a little while. If it didn't ease up within the next 20 minutes, I was going to call my dad and ask for a lift. The thunder and lightning raged on in the sky, growing nearer and nearer. I could feel the electricity in the air rising up my spine. Vienna wanted me to move on. Marco had Neil, and since we were graduating now, they were both getting more excited. Soon they'd be allowed to show their love in public. Gunnar was still with Sarah, as far as I knew, and things between us had gone back to normal after I came back to Earth. Neil was over nearly every day now, and my parents kept a close eye over everything I did. But at least I wasn't grounded anymore. I looked up into the sky and bit my lip. I wonder what Max is doing right now. Was he sitting on a step somewhere, looking up into the sky, thinking about me? Was he fighting a war against the Juperian board? Was he hurt? I tried not to think about any bad things, or I'd get too depressed. Crack! A huge rumble of thunder sounded right over me, making me jump back in fright. It was followed by several strobe-like flashes of lightning. I frowned. Odd. Thunder follows lightning, not the other way around. And since when has lightning been strobe? I pulled myself back to the steps and rested my elbows over my knees. Anyway, what was I thinking about before I got rudely interrupted? Oh yeah, Max. A horrible thought crossed over my mind. What if Max has moved on? White light erupted in my eyes and I was thrown backwards. I blinked, flat on my back, and then tried to stop my head spinning. What was that? I sat up and looked. Right at the bottom of the staircase I was sitting on was a huge burnt black hole on the ground. It was smoking and sizzling hot. "What's your problem?" I shouted to the sky, getting onto my feet, ruining my way home, interrupting my thoughts, and now it was trying to kill me. When the sky didn't reply, I turned around to go back into the school. Crack! The thunder grumbled so loud I actually flinched. I whirled around, opening my mouth to start yelling again, but froze. There was someone. A dark figure sat on the edge of the school oval. It was behind the fence, or was it in front of it? And it was just standing there. I shuddered. Was it watching me? For some reason, my feet started walking without my brain's permission. I stepped out into the rain and felt it pelting down onto my head and shoulders, soaking my clothes. But I kept walking. The dark figure rose over the fence, creeping slowly, and climbed down. I could barely make it out. The rain was so hard I couldn't see well enough. I froze, feet stopping in the mud, and my eyebrows rose. But my eyes couldn't go wide because of the rain. "Max!" I shouted through the downpour. The figure landed on this side of the fence and turned to face me. I couldn't see their face, but I could feel their eyes. It was a strange feeling, a different feeling to anything I'd felt before. I couldn't move, but the dark shape moved towards me. "Max?" I mumbled quietly. The tension was rising, and not the good kind. The figure grew taller and taller as it got closer, becoming almost brute-like. I began to shake from the cold. This was definitely not Max. A great Juperian formed through the rain and came to a stop in front of me. He looked down at me with 5 glowing eyes. "Are you Tyler Montgomery?" he asked in a deep, rough voice. I nodded. Where was Max? "Then I'm afraid to inform you that Kaya Zora Max Tejuk has hung under the authorization of the Juperian board for traitorous actions against his own nation and the..." I didn't hear the rest of what he'd said. I sunk to my knees in the muddy grass with a blank expression, the rain still falling heavily onto me. It felt like I'd just died, and my soul had moved on without me, leaving an empty shell. "No," I breathed, making the Juperian stop his speech. "Mr. Montgomery, if you would be so kind as to come with me, the board can offer you protection," the Juperian said, reaching out from my arm to pull me up. I yanked free. "Protection? Protection from what?" I growled, angry now. The Juperian glared at me, eyes glowing harshly through the rain, and a shudder ran through me. No, this couldn't be. Something felt very off. There was no way Max could be dead. "No, it's not possible," I shouted, stepping away from the alien, who began to reach for his weapon. I was completely unarmed and defenseless. He raised it high to aim for me, and then I was thrown backwards with enough force to knock the wind out of my lungs. I coughed and spluttered, laying on my back on the muddy school oval. But it wasn't just that. There was something on me, crushing me. I moaned and opened my eyes, and choked some more. Max, in human form, didn't wait to explain. He climbed off me and turned around, pulling out his own weapon. The huge Juperian growled, a sound I'd heard before, and not from that race. It shuddered and shifted out, legs snapping and changing, dark blue skin melting away to reveal a shiny black one. And now, in the Juperian place, stood a great Martian. Max didn't hesitate. He leapt forward, kicked the Martian in the side of the head. Crack! More thunder, and then plunged the spear end right into the Martian's throat, yanking it to the side to sever it. Flash! Lightning lit the scene. The head rolled over to me, bumping into my foot, before dissolving into black goo as the rest of the body. A panting Max turned to me, sweat mixed with rain dripping from his brow, and gave me a weak smile. He always looked good wet. Max wiped his face with the back of his hand and sniffed, before putting his weapon away and coming over to me. The rain was starting to ease now, becoming more of a drizzle. He held out his hand to help me up, but I was too stunned to move. "You're not dead," was all I could manage to conjure up. Max chuckled, and the sound was something I'd missed for a far too long. I leapt to my feet and jumped on him, wrapping my limbs around his body. He hugged me back, chuckling into my neck. "I take it you missed me then," he breathed, and I nodded like a maniac. "Are you kidding me? That isn't even a question," I shouted at him. He put me down and ran a hand through his black, wet hair. "Sorry it took so long," he told me, and I smiled. "I could say something cheesy right now, but I won't," I replied and grabbed the front of his wet shirt, pulling him to me. I pressed my lips to his and kissed him. He kissed me back, and by the time we pulled apart, the rain had stopped completely, but the air was still damp and fresh. "Is this for good, then?" I asked, glancing down at the black alien goo, which had started to seep into the earth. Max smirked. "Yep, this is for good. That guy was the last one left. Now I'm yours, forever and ever," Max said, and I retained the urge to squeal so that I could keep my dignity. "Awesome," I chuckled, and then remembered. "Oh!" I pulled out my phone, slightly wet, and dialed in V's number. Max watched and waited as I put it to my ear as it rung. "Hey, what's up?" V said through the phone. "I've got a date for the party," I said, and then had to quickly pull the phone away from my face because Vienna screamed so loud my eardrum would have burst. Who? Who? Tell me now!" she screamed, and I could imagine her jumping up and down all over the place. "It's a surprise. See you there." And I hung up. "A party?" Max raised his eyebrow, and I nodded. "Yuppo, and you're not getting out of it," I told him and hugged him. He picked me up and spun me around. "Tell me everything," I added when he put me down. He nodded. "Later. There's something we need to catch up on first," he chuckled, and I looked at him suspiciously. "Like what?" I asked, and he laughed. "Like more of this," he breathed and licked over my lips. I swooned against him, and he laughed harder as he tried to hold me up. "Do it again," I cooed, and he did. "I could get used to this," I breathed, and Max pressed his forehead to mine. "Good. You'll have to," he breathed back. The clouds parted, and the sun began to shine. Max took my hand, and even though we were soaking wet, we headed off to my house happily. I stopped and pulled away from him, bending down and grabbing a handful of mud, and then I threw it at him, hitting him in the chest. 2 years! 2 years I waited! I'm almost 19 years old, I shouted to him. He grinned and grabbed some mud too. "Be grateful it wasn't longer," he said, and chased after me with the mud. I ran away, dodging it, and slid across the mud. "You must be punished," I cried, grabbing mud in each hand, lobbing both at the same time, but I missed. "Don't make me go Juperian on you," he teased, still chasing after me. I remembered the 4 arms and ran faster. "That's unfair," I shouted as I ran, zigzagging this way and that. A huge mud pie hit me in the left shoulder blade, and I stumbled, stopping and turning around. I grabbed 2 handfuls and glared at him. "Oh, you're going down." Mac's eyes went wide, and he laughed, turning and running away from me. "That's right. You better run." He did, all the way back to my house with me on his tail. And that's how you befriend an alien for life. The end. Well, we have officially reached the end. I hope if you managed to make it this far, you at least enjoyed it a little bit. So after this, I have plans to read a few other stories. I didn't actually plan to get this out as quick as I did, but I ran into another one that I really wanted to read, and I needed to bang this out real quick. So there's that. Anyway, I hope you guys enjoyed it. Leave a comment of what you thought of the story. I thought Mookie21 did very well for writing this, and I hope you guys will stick around for the next one. As always, I'm L, and I'll see you guys next time.